Welcome to the Frictionless Innkeeper podcast. Coming right up, fresh tips and insights from lodging professionals aimed at helping you improve your business. Our podcast is brought to you by the Frictionless Guest App, which helps improve your guest stay without adding more to your day. Learn how at frictionlessguest.com. Okay, here we are with the Frictionless Innkeeper podcast series. I'm Matt Langen, and I'm joined by Steve Short, the founder and the CEO of the Frictionless Guest App. How you doing today, Steve?
Doing well, Matt. How are you doing?
I'm doing well. I'm really excited for our listeners to check out this particular episode that we have here where we spoke with Wendy Kelly. She's the owner of the Wall Street Suites and the Agate Beach Motel, which are two independent boutique properties in Oregon. One of them is by the sea and one of them is in Bend, Oregon. She has a pretty unique story. She's been through a lot in the hospitality sector, especially when she opened the Agate Beach Motel, and now she's grown it into two properties. It's a good one, right?
Yeah, it was great talking with her. She's very cool. And I think the story is really pretty amazing because she got into this thing like totally unexpectedly in terms of taking over the one. And from what we've heard, it looked nothing like it does now. I mean, it's like an amazing transformation that took many, many years. I mean, this was not like a quick journey. I mean, this is like bootstrapping to the nth degree. And what's really cool is that she did things her way, without any kind of hospitality type, innkeeping type experience, and built it herself, and has done the same thing with Wall Street Suites, the other one in Bend. Yeah. And so it's just really refreshing and cool to hear the story and how it all came about and the success that she's had. Very cool.
Yeah, I agree. And she also shares some insights on how she uses Yelp to stand out more. And of course, not to give the Frictionless Guest App a plug, but she is a user. And she did talk about that a little bit. And of course, that's not the focus of our podcast, but it was nice to hear her take on that as well.
Yeah, it was. All right. Well, let's get at it. Let's listen.
Let's do it. With that, we hope you enjoy this upcoming episode of the Frictionless Innkeeper podcast series with Wendy Kelly, the owner of the Wall Street Suites and the owner of the Agate Beach Motel. And Wendy and Steve, thanks for joining us.
Hello. Thank you.
Hello. Steve, how you doing?
Doing well, Matt. Thanks a lot. And thanks, Wendy, for joining us. We appreciate it.
Oh, you bet.
Awesome. Well, let's kick it off. I know, Wendy, when we spoke a few weeks back, just to prep up for this interview, you had a very interesting background, your story about how you got into hospitality and how you came about to purchase your first property, which was the Agate Beach Motel, and would love to hear your story.
Okay. This was back in 1990. My husband's business is a mortgage broker, and he loans money on real property. This property came up on the coast they needed money to run this motel. People had owned it maybe 3 or 4 years, and it had just gone completely downhill. A really non-rentable property, but the location was incredible. I am familiar with the location because I was born and raised over in Newport, which is only 1.5 miles from Agate Beach. Anyway, so we went through with loaning this money on this property, and the people made one payment on the motel and left the keys on the counter. They called about 10 o'clock one night and said, "The keys are on the counter. We are out of here." So we now own a motel, and we live 4 hours away from the property. I had 2 kids in grade school at the time, and we the next day loaded up our little van and drove over to the coast to see what we were facing. And there were, I bet, 150 keys on the counter, just scattered all over. I had no idea, first of all, where to begin. The property was non-rentable. The office, did have a house attached to it, which is where they lived, was boarded up and walls knocked out. I just sat down and cried because it was where do you begin? But the location just kept eating at you. I mean, I was ready to turn it over to whoever comes and takes these things away. But my husband saw a vision, looked at it as a true project. It was a time in our life when we didn't have money to just do this. We still raising a family and both of us working. Anyway, okay, we have the motel. We start in figuring out what we even do. Do we level it and start over? Do we refurbish and keep this? 1940 was when this property was built. So one thing led to another. We start in and we get one room rentable, and then we get another two. That was probably the first 8 months. But every weekend we were back and forth to the coast, pick up the kids from school. I head over. He stayed over there with a crew. And so it took about 5 years to get it to where we had 10 units to rent. And then it was just bare bones rentals. I had no idea about keeping track of reservations. We weren't on the internet. We had no software. I had a calendar that I had 10 lines on every day to see that's how I kept track of people reservations. We didn't accept credit cards. We had no way of it. Anyway, it evolved, and that's how it started. So lo and behold, here we own a motel, and neither of us have any experience in hospitality.
And Wendy, just to give some perspective, I mean, every weekend, loading up kids, like you say, school age, driving 4 hours. I mean, people don't even like to drive 4 hours to go away for a weekend, much less to have to go work. But give us some perspective. I mean, I remember you saying when we talked a couple of weeks ago that, like, some of the rooms, it was like dirt floor or, I don't know, moss growing on things. But I guess your husband kind of managed some workers to help, but this was basically sweat equity that you both put into this place for 10 years
straight. And we really didn't have any connections over there for workers. So we took crews over. They would stay 1 or 2 weeks at a time, and then they'd have to come home and do their thing, and they'd send somebody else over. And, at first it was just demolition. It was just there was yellow tape across 2 or 3 of the rooms because they had drugs going on in there. Yeah, it was the most challenging time of our life. We look back on it, and now we can sort of laugh about our choices we made at the time, what was important. And anyway, that was my introduction to hospitality.
And just out of curiosity, I don't want to harbor on this too much, but
good.
What was it like when you only had 1 or 2 rooms and people came to stay?
Yeah.
What was their comment about the rest of the place? I mean, I can't, it's not like I've seen pictures or anything, but I can imagine that, it must have looked like an abandoned,
it did. Yeah. There was dirt piles everywhere, broken windows in the other units, and they, they're only paying $35 a night. That was our first fee.
Right. Okay.
So it was a bed, and we just were trying to get a little income in at the time to be able to maybe do 2 more rooms. But it was, the whole thing was just, buying sheets, buying beds, getting the right TV, and we couldn't spend too much, but we needed a nicer and we did them one at a time because we couldn't do all of them at once. So it was one room at a time. That's why it was really about 5 years before we had 10 rooms we could rent. In the meantime, we're staying at my dad's house. My dad had a home over there. I still live there. And so we're staying there. So he watches the kids during the day, and I go out and put on my gloves and my boots. And oh my gosh, it sounds so ridiculous talking about it. Who would do that? But the location was so premier. It sits right on that beach, and it's at a beautiful surfing spot. And we did have a guy come in to see if we were interested in selling at that point. This was in the beginning, and I begged Pat to do that. I just really thought, please get out of this. And his vision was to level it and build 30 condos in this property. And I just cringed on that. But it was toying between, do I want to spend the rest of my life doing this, or can we just run? And we just decided to keep it like it is and just upgrade it. 20 years of upgrading, and now I'm so proud of that place.
Was it partly because you knew the place growing up that you didn't want to level it?
Yeah.
Yeah,
exactly.
So this is kind of like It's a Wonderful Life. You're like George Bailey, you know.
It's set up like the old motor lodges. Yeah.
You did what you thought was right.
That's right. That's exactly what it is. But I lived it. I can look back and say that now. In the beginning, I was thinking, it has to be the most ridiculous thing.
Yeah, it was like Mr. Potter was the guy that showed up. Hey, I'll buy it from you. I'll level this place, you know. And you're
he was adamant about that. He had a vision, and that story for Agate Beach.
But so did you, and yours won out, and it took a lot of work to get there. So
the most challenging part is we had to build stairs down this cliff. That goes right. I mean, there's 61 stairs that go down to the sand on the beach, and that was something else to get that orchestrated because it's on the side of a cliff. And anyway.
Sounds like because you must have nailed all of those step boards.
No, I didn't really nail them, but I was telling them it didn't look straight, and you got to angle this, and anyway.
And you're still married, though.
Yeah, we are
That's
still
amazing
married.
Too.
42 years it's this year. 42 years.
Well, you lived through it. You made it through and out the other end, and now you're reaping the benefit. So, in today's world, contrast what, now it was 30 years ago, or close to it, $35 a night. What's, you still have 10 rooms now. Is that right?
Yes, right.
And how much typically, I know it's probably seasonal, but
how much
typically are you charging per room now?
Right now, at this moment, I believe they're at $179.
$179. Okay.
Yeah.
And peak period is how much?
Yeah, summertime is our peak, and they go up to $279.
Wow, that's quite a difference. And
yeah.
Now, of course, aside from the initial clean it all up, you've done a lot more than that. Is that right? Yeah.
Yeah, we ended up, doing all rewiring, plumbing, all new interiors. They each have their own carport. I mean, it's like a moto lodge. It's like the old-time moto lodge where you park your car in a carport next to your suite. And they're all kitchens and bedrooms, and so they're little quaint little cottages. It's really my heart. I love that place over there. I wouldn't sell it for anything now.
Awesome. So you got the bug well enough to then try to do the same thing in Bend where you live. Is that right?
Yeah, no, it didn't really happen like that because it's sort of the same thing happened. It sort of fell on us over here.
And that's the Wall Street Suites, by the way.
That's the Wall Street Suites, yes.
Okay. Mm-hmm.
And it's more of an urban shishi place, little boutique-y. And we initially had partners on this property, and the partners were the ones that really wanted to pursue this. It was during the time when this property had gone back to the bank, and so he was buying it from the courthouse steps, actually. He needed some extra help getting started, and he assumed I had some hospitality experience. And anyway, we did it together, and he's a builder, so we really tricked this one out with high-end everything. And
that was, what year was that? Like 2013? Is that right?
That's when we opened. We
okay.
Started the project in 2011.
Okay, so you purchased it 2011.
Yeah.
And it took about 2 years to do all the work that you wanted to do on it.
Yes.
And you opened in 2013. How many rooms? 17, is it?
Yes, it has 17 now. When we bought it, they were 35 typical motel rooms.
Okay.
So we just split them in half, or doubled them, I guess, and made suites out of them. So they're all one bedroom, full kitchens type units as well.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, and you say you went more upscale
Yes.
than Agate? Okay.
Yeah, it sort of afforded that. I mean, it just in the environment that we have here, the location, it's urban, and Bend is a real active. We have a ski mountain that's 20 miles away and high lakes galore. So it's a very outdoorsy. Yeah, it's way more high end than Agate Beach.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And we have to ask everybody about the COVID thing.
Yeah.
How have things fared with COVID? Is it, in some
Well,
cases we talk to innkeepers and it's a real challenge. In other cases,
right.
It's like, wow, we got all these people we didn't expect. So,
Yeah. Yes. It's when back last March, Agate Beach was shut down. The state shut everybody down. So we were shut down over there for 2 months. Wall Street, which is in Bend, they didn't shut down. It did, of course, diminish, the traveling. So we had a couple months of very low occupancy, like 15%, I think. But once people started moving around, we broke records this year for occupancy in both properties, actually. They have their own entrances, outside entrances. So each of them have their own outside door. And there's no central air. It's all individually air conditioned and heated, so the circulation of the air is minimal. And it's small, so it appealed to people traveling because of those features. And really, I mean, I feel guilty almost because we have really benefited from this shutdown. Kept all of my employees on. In fact, we've had to add 2 employees.
well, there you go.
So,
You shouldn't feel guilty then. I mean, you can always donate the money if you want, I mean, plus, I mean, you got 2 more employees. Yeah, I mean, so part of this was just good fortune of,
yeah.
okay, here's how we built it. We added the kitchen thing too, maybe, right? Because that's probably important, because if people are worried about going to restaurants or they're shut down for a while or whatever, they've got self-sufficiency by doing that. So, but you had the foresight to do that. And you also, I mean, we'll talk about Bend a little bit too. I mean, because it's a different, I don't know if I want to say demographic, but people are going to Agate Beach because of Agate Beach, right?
Mm-hmm.
In the case of Bend, it's still things to do, outdoorsy things to do in the area. Is that right?
Yeah. Yeah. The golf courses, the mountain, it's limited. They monitor that at this time, but the restaurants are still closed here, but all takeout is available and they deliver. And so, yeah, it's not, the traffic in Bend isn't normal, but we still have people coming to Bend.
Mm-hmm.
And I think the kitchen has a lot to do with it. It's helped us out. It was a big discussion between the partners on this because we are so close to downtown. It's just like a block from main downtown, and there's lots of lovely restaurants down there. And so do we put a kitchen in? Do we don't put a kitchen? And because of Agate Beach having a kitchen and the feedback that we get from that, I was really insistent on not just a convenience kitchen, a full kitchen. So I won that one, and we put a kitchen in, and not even thinking about this. I mean, this wasn't even on the horizon. But yeah, it's worked out well. People appreciate it. They have kids that they do their breakfast. They hit the slopes or the mountains and come back. The kids have pizza and the parents go out to dinner. I don't know. It just works, and it's extra space, so it feels a lot more open.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I'm not sorry we added that kitchen at all.
Well, and you just mentioned that, in fact, if you would have had, I don't know, a hotel motel expert come in before you made that choice, they might have said, don't put the kitchen in as well. Yeah. But talk about, I guess, it's not like you're a rebel or anything, but talk about the fact that what have you learned from, like from Agate Beach and the now 30 years of that. But at the time, about 20 years of doing that when you started the Wall Street Suites project. Just talk about, in general, your approach to hospitality, to being, responsible for lodging properties and how you interact with guests and how you, because you never had a playbook, right? So you basically, right. you wrote it, right? So
no, I did.
So yeah, when it might be unconventional.
It truly is unconventional.
So yeah, to talk about that.
I just went into hospitality with my gut. Like, how do you want to be treated? What feels good when you check in? What's the magic word that makes you go, oh, God, that was so cool they did that? I mean, what is that? And because both properties are small, we can touch on a personal level with guests. It's so interesting to have a guest check in, and both of my properties are pet friendly because I'm pretty much a dog person, and we know the names of the dogs, and it's just, that was the most important to me, is that feeling you can do in a property like this. I wouldn't know how to operate in a larger service thing. I don't know. We just have fun with it. I hire people with that kind of attitude. Mostly I do just hire attitude, and they seem to fit in and learn. And I have an awesome team of women that help out in the marketing and social media side of it. I know nothing about any of that. And they're just the same type. I think you either have that in you or you don't. And it's so fun to do. I love this business now. We were just talking today about this couple that's coming in for their anniversary, and she goes, I think I remember that she liked whatever kind of wine it was. And so we looked it up and found out that, yeah, that's what she ordered. And so we ended that. So we made them a little basket, put it in the room, and can't wait for them to, they're actually showing up tonight. But it's just that side of it. That's why it was hard with a partner, because it was always the bottom line in that. And I think the bottom line is truly important, don't get me wrong, but it's just so fun to get there with people leaving with great reviews and smiles on their face. And I'm talking about, well, both properties actually. We have such an awesome location, and most people that come are happy. They're on vacation. There lots of families, dogs. Different. That's why it's really hard to talk with any authority about the hospitality side of it, the analytics, with the software that's out today, the internet. I mean, I can see what's going on at Agate Beach at any moment. That's just incredible to me. I have cameras, I have the internet, I can look at the software, and it just works. I don't want to complicate it with more reports and more solutions. I just like it simple. It seems to work for me. I do it pretty much by myself, and I just have great people around me.
Well, and it sounds like you're not, I mean, first off, there's the fact that you're not beholden to any one, investors or, a franchise arrangement or whatever. And I guess that can always work, cut two ways. I mean, the owners of the original, before you took over Agate Beach, they weren't beholden to anybody except your husband's mortgage loan, which did them in. And so they didn't keep things together. But obviously, before we talked with you, I told Matt, I said, I can tell, I mean, you go and you look at your social media ratings or your, the Yelp, whatever ratings, your OTA ratings. And, and it's like 4.8, 4.9. I'm sorry if I said 4.8, that might be too low. 5, 4, 9,
I don't even know what they are.
but I told Matt, I said, they're doing something right. And it's both properties. And you can tell that they're active on social media. So they're interacting with guests, or at least they have this mentality that, you interact, you don't run and hide or whatever, and it's not surprising to hear you talk about what you do, wanting to interact with guests. But you're right. The fact that you're independent and also you're relatively small, right?
Yeah, that's exactly right.
Yes. There's only so much, could you do that? Could you replicate that if it was 500 rooms? Probably not,
No, exactly.
You could try to figure out some way to do it, but I don't know that anybody has. So that gives you that freedom and that ability to kind of choose your own path. And that's one of the cool things, I think, the cool thing about innkeeping in general, right? That's that allows people like you.
I have to relay a story to you, and I don't think I told you about this, but this was a couple of years ago. We had a full house in the middle of summer. The town is booked, and we had a guest with a confirmation number. We had just started using, Booking.com maybe, and they had a confirmation number. We didn't have any rooms, and it was, anyway, a mix-up. So the front desk called me, and I said, oh my gosh, let me make some calls. So I called around, no rooms anywhere. And she goes, they're really a nice couple. I said, oh, how nice are they? And she goes, they're just lovely people. I said, well, I have an extra bedroom. It has its own bathroom. Ask if they want to come out here and stay. So they showed up at my door. We met this lovely couple. Come to find out, they own a winery, one of the favorite wines that I love, and over in the valley. And next day I have a case of wine on my porch. And that's sort of how I like to operate. I don't know that I would do that again, but I had a good experience of my first time.
You were the original Airbnb.
Yeah, exactly. Well, I think it was before 2 years ago, but yeah.
That was
anyway, that's just the story of.
Yeah, that's pretty wild. Amazing. Anything else you want to throw out about, either operationally? Because you run a tight ship as well. Part of this is that, like you say, you've got kind of that corporate culture, or maybe I should say non-corporate culture mindset that everybody's there to enjoy them, to have fun. You're meaning the people you employ, your GM and your people there that work for you for the motels. So you've got that perspective, and you try to hire with that kind of soft skill attitude. But at the same time, people come in, especially if they don't have any real experience in lodging, but they have the right perspective on life in general. You've got to be able to kind of give them sort of a playbook and say, here's what we do and here's how we do it to some degree. Do you not? Even though you sound kind of loosey-goosey with the approach, are you a big sort of process and, organizational type person?
Yes, I am. We have a very strict employee handbook.
Okay.
Don't get me wrong. It is a business. And I have now 2 daughters that are helping me out, and they have both college degrees and very much organizational skills that I don't. So things are very much sharpening in that end. I like it as long as it's simple. So I need organization. I need to be able to reconcile. I need to be able to see the pluses and minuses. But again, because we're small, it's not that hard to do.
Yeah, exactly.
I probably don't do it the conventional way. I just learned not too long ago about Excel spreadsheets. And
oh, really? That's interesting.
That's magical, really.
And the last one, I'm a little bit, the last thing we wanted to hit on a little bit, I'm a little bit embarrassed about, because we normally don't have anything on here about our app. It's usually not, the podcast is not about that. So rather than really talking about the app, which that's how we know you, because you're a relatively newer client of ours using the Frictionless Guest App.
Sure.
I think the one thing that would be kind of cool would be to hear about the local story, because for us, it's always about that. And you're certainly that type of person, innkeeper, whatever. So you had told us a little bit about something that happened. Maybe you can just go into that and then we can move on from there. Yeah.
Well, I was exposed to your app through a podcast. That's how I heard about it.
Which, by the way, let's give them kudos. That was
for sure.
The Odysseus folks, right?
Yes, Odysseus InSpeak.
InSpeak is the podcast. That's right.
Yeah.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
And they're a local, they're from Oregon as well, Odysseus. But so it just is right up our alley with the personal service. I just thought it was ingenious, honestly. We can make our recommendations because we get it every day. Where should we go eat? Where should we do this? And we have enjoyed it. Our guests rave about it. They've never seen anything like it. Once they learn how to take a picture of the code, that's the tricky part.
Oh, the QR code, you mean?
Yeah, the QR code. People that haven't used those codes, they thought they had to have a app that read the code. They didn't realize they could just take a photo. Anyway, my best experience so far, and honestly, it's only been, 4 months that we've had it in operation, was we are a big bike community. Both road and mountain bikes are huge here. And so we have often bikers that stay here. And we had a group that found out about this locally owned bike shop. There's a lot of bike shops here. But this one particular one I love. It's local people, and they do a great job. So he found the bike shop because of our recommendation on the app. And he goes down, he buys a bike from this local bike store. So we get kudos or thank yous from the bike store and get them recognized. And then about 3 or 4 days later, it was so funny how these two things just were so close. He had a person buy a bike from him. They weren't staying with us. Actually, they were staying in a resort, and they weren't happy with their room or something they weren't happy with. So he was relaying that to the person at the bike store. And he goes, oh, I'm just looking for a place close by so I can stay a couple days and get used to my bike. And he goes, oh, you have to go. Here's the place you want to go. Gave him our number. He came and stayed with us. So it was just and we both commented. Dan, who's the owner of the bike store, called and he said, isn't this awesome? We both got to benefit in 1 week off of this. So that was my experience so far of one of the pluses of the app. I'm excited for the summer to come because there's so many small little kayak rentals that mom and pop own that I can't wait for people to explore and try, because they do these expeditions that are off the beaten track. And it just is such a plus for us to be able to recommend and get them off the big time people here. We have a lot of commercial coming in, and these little mom and pop places aren't able to compete with them. So anyway, I like doing kudos that way for sure. Good. It's fun.
Excellent.
Yeah.
And that was one of the things that we felt, that we wanted to accomplish with the app. I mean, that was one of the big benefits that we felt, that, it's the unique places and people and all of that, the local people. And that's typically what people want, especially when they go travel somewhere and they're not familiar with the place. It's like, I don't want to go down to the Applebee's to eat or I don't want to.
But what it does also is we get to allow my staff to make recommendations. So we had one person that went, Kylie is a name that recommended this particular restaurant and this particular dish at the restaurant. So one guest, a party went down and one person ordered that particular thing because Kylie recommended it. So she comes back to the motel and asks, is Kylie here? And Kylie wasn't there that day, but she was here the next day. So she ran Kylie down and thanked her so much for recommending that. It was just, then they get that interaction that, oh, it's personal. And so it was so far it's just been super. And I'm honored to be on this because I like to get it out there.
Awesome. Well, thank you.
Sure.
And, I think the one other that makes my struggling life a lot happier to hear that what we're doing, even though we have limited clients, is worthwhile, and
Oh, yeah.
And really appreciative. And the funny thing is, I think one of the hurdles for innkeepers and lodging people is concern for, well, I'm not going to interact personally with somebody. And yet that story there with Kylie actually created more interaction. So the technology, really, if it wasn't for the technology, the host probably never would have known that, this restaurant existed, or that Kylie had this recommendation. And so it's meant to enhance that, not to prevent it. I think.
I don't feel that way at all. I just feel like it's too hard if they came in to say, where do we go to eat, or what's a good place to eat? Well, what do you like? And then you go down, and then you have to talk. They can see it. They can see the menu. Hats off to you, really.
Well, thank you.
It's good, and I'm enjoying working with it.
Awesome. Well, we appreciate it. So, all right, Matt, I've said enough. You want to hit our guest experience questionnaire or question part of the tail end here?
Sure. Yeah. I'll take over on this part. So, Wendy, this is where we just ask a few standard questions that we ask most people that we do interviews with, especially property owners, to get their take on the guest experience. So if you don't mind, I'll run through our questions.
Yeah, sure.
All right, perfect. So the first one is, how do you define the guest experience, and how important is it to your property, and what strategies and tactics do you use to address it and improve it?
Wow. I think it's really individual how you define it. There's so many different experiences from the time they call for the reservation and from the time they leave. There's so many different experiences along the way. And I just think the more personal you can get on a guest experience is the way I like to go. I like to be first name basis. I like to be activity based, why they're there, talk about the newest golf course we have. I think
it's great. So you're saying it's really personalized. Personal. It's individualized. I think that's a really good takeaway. Yeah.
To do that way for sure.
That's great. Awesome. Well, our next question is, if you could have an hour of time with the leading expert or consultant in the hospitality industry, what are the 2 or 3 most important questions you would like to ask them?
Well, I don't think they'd want to talk to me. I do have something I'm addressing right now, and I don't know really where to go for it. I'm trying to have benefits for continuous stays, and I'm trying to figure out the right way to do that. If it's nights off, if it's amenities, we're trying to figure that out. And I don't really know who to contact about that. We have our reservation software that we're using doesn't accommodate that. So we're trying to figure that out. And I guess I don't think I have an answer for you. I don't think anybody would want to spend an hour listening to me. I'm so unconventional.
Well, no, the idea is that they'll tell you once you ask them the question, then you listen to them. But
and then I probably wouldn't do it.
I know, and then you wouldn't do it anyway because you go against the grain as it is.
I don't like that. That's what I would say. No,
there we go. All right, and that's the answer.
That's great. We'll take it. We'll take that answer.
The first time anybody's told us to take a hike on these questions. I love it.
Yes, we're breaking new boundaries here today.
I've had more than one person say that, honestly.
All right, great. And Wendy, our last question here is, what is the percentage mix of guests that stay? And of course, you have 2 properties based on the 3 age groups, and how are those percentages trending? And the 3 age groups are under 40. The second one is between 40 and 60 years of age. And then the last one is over 60 years of age.
Oh, man, that's really hard. I think the property at the coast, I think more than age percentages, it's more families. So I would think the mid-range over there, because it's way more family oriented with the beach right there. And at Wall Street, I would think it's younger. It's active skiers, bikers. So I don't know
So more under 40 at Wall Street Suites and Bend.
No, I wouldn't say under 40. I would say the mid one, 40 to, what'd you say, 40 to 60?
40 to 60. Okay.
Yeah, that's definitely Wall Street.
Okay. Whereas,
I would think under 40 at the coast because of the surfing and the families and so that's my answer, I guess.
And how many, just out of curiosity, how many over 60 percentage wise? Is it, 20% or less?
Okay, that's what you wanted, percentage.
Well, yeah, I mean.
Okay, over 60, I would say, I'll combine both properties. I would say, I'm guessing now, 15%.
Okay.
I shouldn't say that because I'm over 60.
Well, I don't think your age has anything to do with your guests.
Well, I'm trying to think of
well, this
whatever.
This question is
20% over 60.
Some way towards the millennial, the feel for like just in general age, where things are going with bed and breakfast and independent innkeeping, and whether it tends to be a younger group and trending towards a younger group or not. And
I think,
part of that, the trend question is, does it seem that there are younger people generally kind of, more so than before or not? That's all. Yeah.
Yeah. We're priced at a point that younger people probably wouldn't stay here.
Mm-hmm.
I would think it would be split between 40 to 60 and 60 and over.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
We don't get too many 20-year-olds, I guess, that stay. We don't have rooms that are set up for the maximum in a room is 4. So it's not like a group of people would come and stay. I don't have any rooms like that.
Right. Okay. That's fine.
Anyway.
All right.
All
Great.
right.
Well, then I think we are at the tail end here where we always ask the standard question. Is there anything else to add, Wendy, or anything we may have missed? I know we covered off on a lot, but just want to make sure we didn't miss anything.
Oh, I don't think so. Nothing that's really important. That's for sure. This was fun. I think you guys are awesome and carry on, right?
Awesome.
Absolutely. Right. You too. Absolutely. All right, Matt, you going to lead us out?
I'll take us out. Okay, great. Cool. And our guest for this episode of the Frictionless Innkeeper podcast, as you heard, was Wendy Kelly, who is the owner of Wall Street Suites and the Agate Beach Motel, which are 2 independent boutique properties in Oregon. As you heard, one was by the sea, and the other one is located in Bend, Oregon. And we really hope you enjoyed this episode of the Frictionless Innkeeper podcast, brought to you by the Frictionless Guest App. If you wish to learn more, please visit frictionlessguest.com. Once again, that's frictionlessguest.com. And Wendy and Steve, thank you so much for your time today.
You bet.
Thanks, Matt. Thank you so much, Wendy. We really appreciate it.
You bet. Thank you, guys.